Hey guys, and welcome back again today for a video that many of you actually have requested. And what we're gonna do today is we're gonna build the main synth of The Feeling by Massano together, live in this video. So some Afterlife content again, I hope you enjoy. Let's go! When we're rebuilding a sound, there's actually different stages of work that we have to do, right? So first of all, it would be nice to have the notes that are played, right? And then when we have the notes, we can kind of find the base for the sound. So maybe the right wave shape or the right envelope settings already, play around with the filter and stuff. And when we have the kind of basic concept of our sound, then we can go into more of the details, add some textures, add some FX and stuff, and put it all together to make it sound exactly like the sound we wanted to rebuild, right? So let's start on the MIDIs then. We know the track is in E minor, right? So we can go to the E2 already. And let me just go to a 2-bar loop here. And we know the progression goes something like this, right, along those lines. That would be the 5th of the scale, the 6th of the scale. We can have a listen. So we know that kind of sounds right, but not completely. So we should maybe check this out. And now we get the right kind of steps. So when you're rebuilding a sound, I would suggest you to put the original right next to it and always do an A-B, right? So you can easily get that. What you would also get very fast is that this is not completely the right rhythm, but rather the switch from E to Z here happens right on the offbeat of the second kick drum. Yes. And now this will repeat. But what we actually need now to make the actual notes that are played in The Feeling, we need an arpeggiator. And first of all, we want it to be on 8 notes. And then I want to draw an automation here to make it go 16th on the second half. Alright, that's already the whole magic on the MIDI notes. So that's that, and now let me just put an EQ here real quick to already cut some of the low end, which will be necessary later. And now we can jump into the sound here, right? So first of all, let me open the filter and we can have a listen here. Maybe we can also put an envelope already. That's already something very useful to have an envelope on the filter that we can adjust. So we can clearly say it's not a clean saw wave, right? So the way I would do this is I would maybe try some different shapes out, right? For example, we could try the double detuned saw. And we very quickly hear that this is also not the right sound, right? So over the time you're going to get more experience and hear the actual wave shapes already when the sound is playing. So this sound, for example, to me sounded like a kind of acid style sound. So if we have a listen at this now, this is already much closer, because what this is doing is because the wave is like has more kind of ups and downs, we kind of lose the lower end of the sound and we have more emphasis on the mids, for example, which is actually what's happening in the track as well. So now we can play around a little bit here and this will make the sound even brighter, right? We can have a listen. It's also a very nice sound, but definitely not what's happening in the track, right? It's not moving that much. I think in the track it should actually be 1 octave lower. So that's already pretty close, right? So the wave shape, we got it already. It's definitely this kind of acid shape, and we should have the right octave already. Right, we can play with the wavetable position maybe a little later when we have more of the sound. We also have kind of the right filter settings already. I think the filter is kind of open and just gets still a little bit of envelope, because this will make the track feel a little more alive eventually, which is very important. And now let's go to the envelope 1, which is the envelope of the amplifier of Serum. So basically that means it controls the volume, right? If we raise the attack, for example, we get a swept sound, and therefore what I want to do here is lower the decay to around 200, something like that, and also bring the sustain down a little bit, because I feel like in the feeling the sound feels very short and plucky. It's not too plucky in a way that we would need maybe something like this, but it's actually not that far away from that, right? So we just put a little bit of sustain and a little more of decay. And there we go. There we go. So we have the right envelope shape, we have the right kind of wave shape and sound area already. So now let's try to get a little more into the textures and FX and make everything a little more realistic, right? So one thing that's definitely on there is a nice white noise. So I'm gonna take the June 106 high pass white noise, just put it here in for like 30% or something, and I actually don't even want it to be in the filter, because I think like this sounds actually pretty cool. Like this we get more of the kind of just a little bit noise on every hit, and like when we put the noise outside of the filter, when we don't let it go through the filter, we get this kind of noise texture on the whole note, which is very nice, I think. And we don't need that much then, right? We can leave it at like minus 30 dB or something around that. So now let's go to the FX. What we definitely need, we can do a little planning here now. We want some stereo effects. We want some distortion to bring it all a little more up, right? Make it a little more compressed also in a way, and add more frequencies. And we definitely want some dimension, right? We want some delay and reverb. Maybe not the dimension from here, maybe yes, but what we want is dimension in the sense of some delays and some reverb that make us feel like the sound plays in an actual real life room, for example. So I want to start on the distortion, and we have different options here from stronger to weaker ones, and I think what I want to go for here is the tube. We can check others as well. So linear fold is going to give us something very noisy, sine fold somewhat as well if we lower the drive a little bit. It also sounds pretty cool. We could, for example, also add a pre-distortion filter to get rid of some of the low end. Sounds pretty cool, but might be just a little bit too intense, so I feel like I want to go with the tube here. It would be super nice to have like 2 distortion units now in Serum to just add a little bit of the sine shape as well, right? But well, anyways, that's okay. Now we can just add a little bit of delay here and a little bit of reverb. And I'm not gonna go like too much into the detail now of what kind of delay and reverb that is in the real track, because I think this is really about the analysis of the sound, right? So what we're gonna do is just make this kind of stereo dotted delay like this, and add it a little bit, and this reverb is maybe a little bit more. And then we can also try this dimension filter or kind of effect out in the very beginning. So what it does basically is it does this Haas effect that we might have already talked about before. So a Haas effect basically means that the right and the left channel of a signal get delayed a little bit. So if you have a kick drum, for example, and it would hit on both channels at the same time, right? That would feel like the sound is in the middle of in the middle of your audio perception. But if you now delay the two speakers just a little bit and you only need like 5 to 20 milliseconds for the Haas effect, it will start to feel like the sound is super wide instead of coming from the middle, like instead of being a mono sound. So this is what we want to do here. And this effect is, if we do it too much, like if we raise the size up too much, we will actually hear the delay of the two speakers. If we just lower it down a little bit, our ear is not really capable of hearing the difference, but then it, as I said before, rather thinks the sound is super wide, which is a nice effect to make synthesizers or vocals or anything much wider. So we can go down here maybe. You can hear this best on either headphones or like a good monitoring system if we raise that up now. You can hear it almost sounds like a delay, especially because our sound is so plucky. So I want to go down here and also just mix in a little bit, right, for this kind of stereo information before the reverb. And this is it actually. So now we can try to find the perfect wavetable position here, right? This is obviously very difficult without the A and B, right? If we do kind of compare it, but still, I think somewhere around here, that's kind of very close already. And then there's one last trick that I want to show you. And I think, I'm not sure if it's actually used, but even if it's not used in the track, it sounds very nice, and it is using the sync here. And we don't want to go full on like having this, even though that might be a nice layer, for example, to the sound, but rather we want something like this, only adding a little bit of the wave shape to it. Because what that does to the sound is it makes it feel even brighter. So remember, in the beginning I put on this EQ because I already knew that in the original song obviously the synthesizer got mixed, right, and it was a little bit compressed, which we didn't do by now, but it was also EQ'd and the low frequencies were taken away because he probably needed space for the bass line and stuff, right? So that's why I put the EQ on here already. But still, if you listen to the original, you might feel like it's a little more bright than just this patch. So I thought the sync is a very nice option here to, if we just use it by some percent, just add a little bit of harmonics on top, right? And kind of shift the focus from the lower mid area to the higher mid area, right? So I would say this is actually the whole sound already. So now obviously if you want to play around with that, maybe you should put the filter also in the noise also in the filter. So there's all kind of nice stuff that you can do with that sound. So it's always very nice to make a rebuild, not only to have the sound exactly like what you wanted to rebuild, but also have a good starting point to make your own sound out of it. Like we can just do a little bit of that now and then we're good to go. Like for example, what I think would be cool is to have something super sawy on top here. could also add a little glide. Turn it into something more kind of bass style. So there's plenty of options, and I hope you're going to explore some of them when you download the sound. It's in the description. You can play around with it, right, and start to find your own kind of ways to form it into your sound. So guys, as I always tend to say, leave your requests for any video topics in the comments, right? Because we're reading all of them, we're trying to answer you guys and find the content that is perfect and helpful for you. So I would say until then, have a nice time and keep making music.